The great thing about this video's craft is that you can make a wind chime with pretty much anything, such as things you already have at home. For our base, you basically just need a stick, something you can tie your items to. You can get an actual stick from outside, which I recommend sanding before you get started using it. You could use a dowel rod, you could use an old metal hanger, even an embroidery hoop and hang your items from below, or just a pencil. So take a look around at your home and see if you have anything that would work. Next, you'll need some string. There's endless options, whether it's twine, fishing line, yarn, rope, even dentifloss. Of course, if your wind chime will be outside in the heat and rain and snow, you want something sturdy. So we have a bunch of different options here, depending on how we want it to look. Some of it is more decorative and looks nice, and other options are sturdier. So see what you have to work with and go from there. Finally, the fun part, finding things that make noise. It really could be anything. If you've got a junk drawer at home, look for old keys, metal washers, scrap metal, anything that can jingle in the wind. You could also try something like seashells, old broken jewelry, beads, and so on. The noisier, the better. So look around and see if you can find things that might make noise when you jingle them in your hand. Jingle bells obviously are a great option, but you might just have to test out what you have and see what would work best for your wind chime. Let's get started. I'm just going to use a simple stick for my base that I found outside. I want my wind chime to look rustic. I'll also be using fishing line to attach my pieces to the wind chime, because some of the holes in the items I'll be tying on are very small, and the fishing line is thin enough that it can be threaded through, and it should be sturdy enough not to snap with wear and tear. Of course, it will be different for each wind chime, so you want to keep in mind what you'll be tying onto it and find an option for string that works best for you. So here's the part of the craft that will take the most time, tying on each of your items. Be sure to space out your items a little, but not too far apart. They need to be close enough that they'll bump into each other. I double knotted everything so it would survive all the wind. You also want to keep in mind as you're working not to let your lines get all braided and tangled. That will only slow you down. As I added more items, it got more crowded and chaotic, so it was easier to hang my wind chime while I worked on it, just so I could see how it would hang and to keep it from getting too crowded and tangled. So with these seashells, each of them has a different weight, especially some of these bigger ones. They've got a little more pressure being pulled on them on the string because it is so heavy. So you want to make sure that you're knotting it real well when you're tying it on there. And if you don't already have seashells that have holes in them, you could burrow a hole into them. Some of these, such as this little disc here, it's made of a really thin material, and so it was easy to break through it. I was able to just use an X-Acto knife and burrow into it. Some of these already had some holes in them. They maybe have been weak from wear and tear, or they were just manufactured that way. Depending on where you get your seashells, you can special order them so that they have holes. Some of them may have occurred naturally. So depending on how much work you want to put into it, you do want to take that into consideration, that you'll need some way to attach your seashells. So I have these aluminum metal rings that when they jingle together, they make a light, delicate sound, which is going to be a great addition to add some variety to our wind chime. However, because they're these loose rings, you have to attach them a little differently. So what I did was I double knotted them in little intervals on our string so we could have several in one line, and then I'll just cut off the extra string. But I'm going to space these out so there's some variety, and it'll be able to survive any impact and not fall off the string. Don't get discouraged if it takes a long time to make your wind chime. The more you add to it, the more unique it will be. However, you don't have to make it more complicated unless you want to, so just have fun with it. So I've added these wooden beads to our wind chime, and on their own, if you listen, they don't really make a lot of sound. However, because they're weighted, they'll act as an extra percussion element in the wind chime, so when the wind blows, there'll be extra impact on the nearby pieces. Almost done, but I think it's still missing something. I'm going to add one more element to our wind chime so we have just a little extra noise. Now let's test it. It sounds great, right? I think we're ready to hang it. Okay, this is the last step of our craft. Our wind chime is done and it needs to be able to hang. So using some rope, I'm going to use some old macrame cord. I'll cut a piece of it, but first let's measure it out. I want it to be long enough to knot it here, and then have some slack so I can hang it, and then knot it over here. Again, you can just double knot at this point. That should be sturdy enough to hold your wind chime up. And the rest is history. Ready for the big reveal? Here's our DIY wind chime, and it didn't cost a thing to make it. I hope you've been inspired to make your own unique wind chime. Show us what you make or tell us about it in the comments. And be sure to check out our other fun video activities. Until next time, this has been Get Crafty with Harrisburg District Library.